But let's take this now a little bit further and have a conversation now with the National Professional Teachers Organization of South Africa. The executive there, Lorvica Matthews, joining us, will also be joined in the conversation, I'm sure in the middle of it, by the National Foundation of Education and Social Justice Deputy Chairperson, Hendrick Makaneta. But Lorvica, good evening and good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. So when you hear the story of 14 computers that have, of course, blown up, and those students particularly having to rewrite that examination in December, does that in a way for you paint a picture of what could possibly happen as we get into these exams, and how other students could be affected and might need to write at a later stage?
Good evening to both you and the listeners, and thank you for having us here tonight. Fortunately, I think it's only the computer component that would be majorly affected by the electricity factor, and the mere fact that the learners are being afforded the opportunity at a later stage is a positive. However, at the same time, it's also an unfortunate incident, because now at the time where they thought they would have been done with the exams, they would have to resit for that specific exam. With regard to everything else, I think the department is prepared. They have discussed everything with the stakeholders, and they seem to be, based on the feedback that we have been given at the stakeholder consultation meetings, they seem to be ready. However, the fact that most of these learners don't have generators at home, and they are already affected by not having the ability to adequately prepare themselves at home. But with having that said, I can also with confidence say that at school the teachers were obviously pulling extra time, assisting the learners as far as possible. So I think I can with confidence say that we are ready.
Yeah. At that stakeholder engagement feedback session, what are the shortcomings that you identified as NAPTOSA that could certainly have a potential to bring credibility issues to the final exams?
I suppose all measures have been taken to prevent irregularities from occurring. The reality, however, is the dishonest human factor. There will be, or unfortunately, it's unfortunate that we have to say that there will most likely be someone who will be swayed to have leakages, but to end up leaking the exam papers. But at the end of the day, the learners and their parents were asked to sign documents stating that they are prepared to account for, and that they know that they will be held liable for the consequences of participating in such acts. So I think that's the only thing. But the unions sit on these irregularity committees as well, to ensure that the learner does not lose out too much in the long run.
Yeah. Ms. Hendrick Makaneta, Foundation of the Education and Social Justice Deputy Chairperson, joining us now. As civil society, what have you identified as possible shortcomings that maybe of the magnitude that they could potentially hamper the performance of learners and maybe even bring credibility issues to the certificate itself?
Well, I must say, Thabo, the class of 2022 has been the most resilient if you look at the manner in which they started in 2020, during the time when COVID hit the country. You will recall that during that time, the annual teaching plan was revised, meaning that learners could not do all the topics that they were supposed to do in both 2020 as well as 2021. And in the same note, there are learners who dropped out in the process And obviously, this cohort of learners who will be sitting for the 2022 exams for the matrics are resilient, as I said, and they've been able to survive some of the most difficult times in the history of the education system. You'll recall that also early this year when we met with the minister in the basic education Lukota, there was a need to modernize the education system. So there are subjects that are actually there which were not there before, which have been piloted.
Yeah.
But I think that this year's cohort should be saluted for remaining in the system, despite the fact that there were different challenges. I mean, if you look at ESCO, the whole issue of load shedding, it has affected many schools, especially those that are found in townships as well as rural communities where there's a school has no generator. So we really want to say it will be a miracle, of course, if this cohort of 2022 can perform to the best of their abilities in relation to the upcoming matric final exams.
Yeah. Talking about those in rural areas, what's your feeling around the learners, for example, in flood-ravaged KwaZulu-Natal? Will they be disadvantaged getting into these exams, or are they equally supported and prepared to be able to deliver?
The learners in KwaZulu-Natal were the hardest hit. As I've already mentioned, the issue of COVID in 2020, the issue of ESCOM, load shedding, which affects mainly the entire country. And if we look at KZN learners alone, if we also look at the manner in which, if you look at the July unrest of 2021, more than 32 schools were vandalized in KwaZulu-Natal alone. And so I think that it's safe to say the learners in KZN have suffered the most compared to all the learners in other provinces. But at the same time, we wish to really take this opportunity because we are aware of the work that was done by some of the teachers. There are teachers who dedicated themselves to come even on Saturdays, some in some instances even Sundays, to come and assist our learners who fell behind as a result of the both COVID as well as the unrest in KZN. And we hope that, we have no doubt about those that are in private schools, because those ones have not been affected at all. Yeah. Despite these challenges, they were able to carry on even with online learning and teaching because they have got the resources. But those that are found in rural KZN as well as townships, those are the hardest hit, and we can only hope that with some miracle they can be able to also perform better.
Yeah. Lorvica, service delivery protests is something that we live with. Even as we speak, we're seeing some reports of some kind of protests that are going on in the country. Are you concerned at all that this might affect students, or do you think there's enough buy-in from communities to allow learners to be able to write without interruptions?
I would like to
No, Lorvica, yeah, go for it.
Sorry. Okay, thank you. I would like to confidently state or confidently say that the communities are rallying behind their children. But however, it has to be a concerted effort, everything. I mean, the teachers, there were some dissatisfaction with regard to the salary increments. But at the end of the day, the teachers remained committed to ensuring that the learners are not disadvantaged, especially more so with the ripple effects from COVID-19 and the floods and the community protests. So we hope that the communities will rally behind the teachers and the schools and indeed ensure that the learners are protected from all sorts of vandalism.
Yeah. Hendrick, there's been a lot of dissatisfaction in the public sector in particular around salaries and negotiations with government. I mean, we have been seeing, for example, Eskom itself at some point, there was protest there that couldn't work. We just came off the Transnet strike, and of course the government hearing from the midterm budget sticking with the 3% salary increase. Public Servants Association saying they're absolutely not happy with that. Do you think things like that could possibly affect and interrupt the writing of these exams?
Well, to be quite honest with you, if you look at the terrain of basic education, particularly the biggest union being SAPU, I don't think that there can be any disruptions. You'll recall that SATU was the first union to accept the offer that was tabled by government. So as such, we don't foresee any challenges in relation to disruptions of any matric exams as such. And our other sister unions as well, I think NAPTOS as well is not really in the culture of disrupting learning and teaching as such. So I think that the exams will run very smoothly until the end of the examination. And we really want to encourage communities as well to make sure that, they remain alert at all times. I'm talking here about the SGBs, to make sure that our learners are able to create a future for themselves. There are problems, of course. We know that government should be able to come on board to ensure that they increase the salaries of teachers as such, and to make sure that teachers are able to earn a living wage. That is something that we concretely support. But historically, teachers are well equipped to ensure that our learners ride smoothly and are able to create a future for themselves.
Yeah. As far as quality assurance is concerned, Hendrick, Lorvica raised the question of the pledge that has been signed by parents as well as learners themselves in terms of integrity and ensuring that nothing untoward happens, everything is above board. Do you think that was a good enough intervention and certainly would guarantee us the integrity of these exams?
In terms of the pledge, it is a good thing that government was able to achieve its objective by ensuring that every learner in this country is able to sign the pledge to make sure that they contribute positively towards the atmosphere, a positive atmosphere for our examination sessions, to make sure that there is no cheating and so on. But at the same time, Thabo, I must say, I've noticed that government has taken, additional steps to make sure that papers are safe. You'll recall that in the past, there was a whole problem of leakage. We find that a paper has leaked here and there. But the fact that the NPA was brought on board to make sure that prosecutions are speedily advanced for those who conduct criminal activities within the department. I think that has actually helped to bring on board the NPA. And at this stage, we don't foresee any problems in relation to leakage. But of course, we cannot speak with a degree of certainty. You never know what can happen. But up to now, it should be very clear this time that there are measures in place to make sure that the 2022 examination session is protected, and that the national certificate will be protected from all forms of, corrupt activities. Learners should not be able to get any paper that has been leaked. And I think that in this regard, we should salute Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga for ensuring that extra measures are put in place. It is in the interest of the country that learners write papers that have not been leaked,
right,
so that they can be able to make a meaningful contribution towards the mainstream economy of our country.
Let's leave it there. I appreciate you all. Thank you very much for coming on, Lorvica, as well as Hendrick, and of course to our viewers as well. Much appreciated, and thanks for that. Well, of course, the journey towards Matric 2022 begins now. It's been a long, hard 12 years for the learners, and so you need to stay with the Newsroom Africa and continue to watch our rolling coverage throughout the day as we bring you special coverage across the country, focusing particularly on the matriculants of 2022. But